And welcome into Poke the Bear, episode 98. Connor, 98. Nobody, number 98. But it is my return to Poke the Bear. I was not here last week. The people got to talk to you personally. You answered some questions, did so. A great job by you. But now I'm back. Now you get me back. And everybody.
All is right with the world.
Yes, I'm back. And weirdly enough, quite a lot's happened since. And by quite a lot, we don't mean trades and things like that, but the Bruins are low key taking over social media. I know right now is in Boston, it's the Celtics time. Give them their space. It is the Celtics time and moment. They've earned it. But the Bruins are out here doing some things on social media. You got Bruce Cassidy at the Red Sox game. You got Derek Forbert running on the beach with his dog Darla. You have Jeremy Swayman and Linus Olmark in the World Championships. But the biggest of all those things is David Pastrnak. I think David Pastrnak, we forget that these players are just like you and me. They're young. They understand social media. And the video that I'm talking about, you've seen it on Twitter, you've seen it on Instagram, where David Pastrnak asks David Krejci a simple question. Are you coming back to Boston? And Krejci just smiles and they both laugh. And I will say, they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing with that. And David Pastrnak was waiting the entire tournament to do that exact thing. You know how many times I imagine Pastrnak bringing that idea up to Krejci throughout the entire tournament. And Krejci's like, no, man, just wait on it. Just wait on it. We'll do it at some point. But it has re-entered the question of the conversation. And it's a legitimate question. What was David Krejci saying there? Do we think he was joking around? We're going to fuck with the people like this, or say no.
Yeah. I mean, I think in the context of that video, I think they were hamming it up a little bit, as you said, well aware of what a video like that would do. I also think they were on weren't they a beer tour or something like that in Prague or something? I feel like I saw something that video was they were on a beer tour or something like that. So maybe they threw a few back by the time they posted that video. But it's one of those things, though, where I'm not going to read too much into the tea leaves, right, in terms of what that video entails, right, of a guy smiling like that. It's almost remember that that Tom Brady video when he was still the Patriots, where it was him walking out the tunnel. You're oh God, what is this? Is he gonna announce his retirement?
Is that a Hulu commercial?
And it was a Hulu commercial.
Yeah,
it's terrible. So again, reading too much into videos or ads or anything like that, not the best way to maintain your sanity, especially during the off season. That being said, though, in terms of will he come back? I think it's on the table. I think the Bruins would love for him to come back because it gives you a legit top 6 center back. And people talk about the fact that yes, David Krejci's older. I think he'll be 36 to start next season. And then you have people every time I would post a video of Krejci setting up a nice goal in the world championships, people be like, he's just playing a bunch of fucking plumbers. I'm like, no, this isn't the Czech league. This again, it's not the cream of the crop, but they're still playing against regular NHL players and looks pretty good. And again, David Krejci is not a guy that I think we've talked about this before, where his game tails off based on what his best skill sets are. Right, he's not the fastest skater. He's never has been. Doesn't have a lethal shot. But in terms of slowing down the pace of play, orchestrating scoring chances, that stuff doesn't really go away. Again. And he's not maybe the player he was 5-10 years ago, but can still be a very effective player. So I think it all comes down to what Krejci wants to do. Bruins would love to have him back. They can make room for him. It's a good problem to have if you have to find a way to accommodate him, especially if Bergeron's coming back, which who knows what the situation is there. But I think it's going to come down to just what Krejci wants. He had his year in Europe, but if that was maybe the plan going into it, that he just wants 1 year back there, see things through and go from there, that's great. But I'm not going to blame the guy for being hey, maybe I'll spend a couple of years here, writing out the career. I'm still getting money. I'm in Europe, living it up. It's all, I think, going to come down to what he wants to do. Because if he has any interest in coming back, Bruins will be more than happy to accommodate it.
Yeah. Also, you guys have a family. Moving your family all the way back to the Czech Republic,
kind of
and then
plays into it, right?
Guys, a year later, going back to Boston. I think that also is an important thing in all of this. And considering his family ties, not even just his wife and kids, but his parents are in the Czech Republic, and his extended family, I imagine, in the Czech Republic. So like, it's not like he just went to a random place in Europe. Like this place has meaning to him, as does Boston, by the way. Like I again, like Boston, as he said, has become kind of like a second home. So as you said, it comes down to what he wants. From a Bruins perspective, you have to weigh the pros and cons. The con, obviously, is he did not play NHL caliber talent this past year. That is a legitimate thing, right? I mean, you're not used to it. He is 2 years older now, or when next season comes around, 2 years older from when he left. So those are legitimate things to take into consideration. I don't think it's expected that he comes back in and you get David Krejci of, 2019 coming on in and working his magic. I think it's an upgrade over what you have. But I also think it's kind of this harsh reality the Bruins have to face where they got to figure out down the middle. Because even if Krejci does come back, this is not a permanent solution. And neither is Bergeron. Even if both of them return on like 1-year deals, you still have this problem you have to face of what the hell is your future down the middle? So again, it's just pushing the problem down further, which again, if you want to just keep running it back, fine. But you're going to have to face this problem sooner or later where you're going to have to figure out who you're going to have as your 1 and 2C going forward. Because right now it's not clear at all.
Right. Yeah. I think that's the main con. And it's one of those ones where I don't know if it's even a con as so much as it is like a acceptance of reality, right? And at the very least, it gives them, you can almost kind of spin it into a positive, right? That, getting Krejci back, and let's say it's with Bergeron, or if Bergeron's not back, just getting a guy like Krejci to fill in a top 6 spot. Is it a short-term measure? Yeah, it's kind of like that meme of the Flex Seal guy where he smacks the flex
Bill
tape
Swift.
against, exactly, where he smacks the flex tape against like the leak as like a short-term thing. Like, that temporarily fixes the Bruins top 6 center problem. But it's something that I think at this point they're well aware they got to get on that shit, right, in terms of fixing it. So if at the very least Krejci coming back gives you time and an opportunity to, have a team in place that maybe can contend next year, it's, again, there's a lot that has to fall their way to have that. But at the very least, you have a key spot in the lineup filled in without giving up draft capital, without paying, a crazy amount of money for it. And at the very least, like, let's say it's Bergeron and Krejci back. Yeah, there'll be people who are like, what the fuck are they doing? They got these 2 older guys. Like, how much more are you going to run back the same crew? Yes, maybe. But if you, at the very least, have a competitive team next year, depending on what else they do, and it gives you another year to reassess what you need to do in 2023 when you have a whole bunch of money coming off the books, you are able to draft another draft class that hopefully you hit on again. You have a whole lot of talented guys from 2020, 2021 that, again, we'll see how they develop, but you at least have this next wave of guys that you give them another year to develop at their own pace. It's not like you bring in Krejci, you're blocking a guy like, let's say, Lysell, if he was a center, and you're like, all right, like, give these guys a run. You don't really have that next center in waiting that you're delaying. So it's a con maybe in that it's kind of going back, going through the same well again in terms of how the Bruins get their success. But at this point, you don't really have any other option, right? Like, unless you want to like really try to go out there and sign like a guy like Kadri or trade for someone, could be an option. But if you're looking at just holding off the inevitable and at least giving yourself more time to reassess things in 2023 when really hard decisions have to be made, it's not the worst thing in the world, right? Like, it's could be a whole lot worse. It could be they go into next year and it's Coyle Holla as their 1 and 2C. That's bad. Like, Krejci and Bergeron back with giving them more time to kind of look at their next kind of steps further down the line. I think a lot of people will take that.
It's kind of like when you were in school in high school and you had a paper due on like a Friday and you'd done none of it and it was Thursday night and you're like, damn. And then the teacher kind of comes up with an extension through the weekend and says, you got to have this on my desk Monday morning. It's kind of like that, right? It puts, it doesn't give you a ton of extra time. It pushes off the inevitable, but you do get some extra time to sort of figure things out. It's not a horrible thing if Krejci comes back and the Bruins suddenly have another year to figure out down the middle, whether it be the free agent route, trade route, draft some more guys, let some other guys develop. You never know about like Merkulov, how these guys, I'm not saying it's definite, and also, we'll get to later, like a Jack Studnicka, right? Again, I don't see a lot there. I don't think people have a lot of faith in him at this point, but you never know. I like the comparison to David Krejci being like Flex Seal. Like, you know, he's David Krejci. Like, that'd be a great meme. You can keep that for Twitter. You know, when he does end up coming back, you can put the David Krejci lettering on the Flex Seal itself. I'll tell you what David Krejci is going to look really good on if he comes back. Bruins fans can look forward to this. He is going to look so good and crisp anytime you want him on NESN 360. I can't wait to watch David Krejci on NESN 360.
I've taken a loan to do that first, Evan.
Well, the loan aside, once you get down to it and you can watch Charlie Moore whenever you want, Dining Playbook whenever you want, you get to see David Krejci and you can rewind and watch the whole game. I mean, just, you know, it's hard to
there's so many great shows, right? I mean, between that, they should bring back like Sox Appeal. Do you remember Sox Appeal?
Oh, yes.
That awful show where it was like a blind date and it'd be like just some guy from Reading being like, so who was your favorite Sox player growing up? And then it would be like an inning later, they'd go to another person. It was the worst show ever. And shockingly, the production value was far from great.
Crazy how that works over there. There was also that show, was it Pocket Money, where some guy would go around the street and ask fans questions for like $5. Was that?
Yes.
Was that the guy on WEI calls himself Fitzy? Was that him?
I think it was. Yeah, he'd go around and be like, "What was the longest home run hit by Willie Mo Pena?" No one would know. He'd be on like Ipswich Street, and no one would know, and that would be the whole show. It'd be just asking like an obscure question like that. Yeah, you think it'd be like very easy questions? No, it'd be like the most obscure thing about like Willie Mo Pena.
It was a legitimate question. Willie Mo Pena used to hit.
I had to look that up afterwards. I'm sure we'll have someone tweet at us the next day and tell us what was the longest home run hit by Red Sox legend Willie Mo Pena. But
I don't know what
we can't offer money, but
no money. I will give a hint though. I believe it was at Kauffman Stadium in Kansas City. I don't think it. I could be totally wrong, but I think that was the one because he had like 7 career home runs, but they were all like 700 feet.
Moonshots. Yes,
those balls all hit Mars. But yes, NESN 360 is going to be in this economy too. Everything inflated. To have NESN 360 come out of the woodwork with $30 a month.
I mean, it sure is inflated, right? They like, you know, I see this thing about inflation. Well, it's like jack up the price. People will be happy about this. Yes. All the original programming on there is going to be so terrific in the games. But I don't know. I've seen stuff that says like, if you don't have cable and you've been using like Fubo, I guess this is somehow a deal. I don't know how that works, so I'm not going to speculate on that. But my God, the early reports on this do not look very promising. So to speak. Eastern Conference Final started on Wednesday night. The Rangers absolutely wiped the floor with the Lightning in game 1. Smoked them.
And we've become accustomed to the Lightning being really good over the past couple of years. I think the book is out on what they did and how they became so good and different things they did. But an interesting case is the Rangers. Because the Rangers have been building for a while. Remember the past couple of years, we kept saying they should be trading for Jack Eichel. Good thing they did not. For their sake, at least. But they're an interesting bunch because, as I said, they've been building for a while. They've had a lot of high picks. But what's interesting about them is they're not there in the Eastern Conference Final because of the high picks. Again, Capo Caco and Lafreniere have been fine. Like Lafreniere's actually been fairly solid this postseason. The kid line with Philip Hedl, like good stuff, but that's not why they're here. Why they're here is more the other draft picks, your second and third round picks. And what's interesting, obviously, you have Panarin, who is a free agent signing, it's rare to see like a free agent signing do that much damage, like that well so fast. But they kind of remind me of the Bruins back in the late 2000s, early 2010s, where they were good at drafting late rounds. That, you know, your Marchands, I know Bergeron was a second round, but again, that wasn't a first round pick. And it's interesting because they had Jeff Gorton there for a while, who the Bruins once had for like 6 months. And he was the one who kind of built up their whole run. So do you have what kind of takeaways do you have from a team like the Rangers right now?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, Evan, in terms of just their road to success. There's a lot of, getting that core in place. And a lot of it has been through either free agency or, I think you look at like a guy like Zibanejad, like I think every team has a foundation of at least one or two like grand slam trades they have. So like that's one where they just got an impact guy for not a whole lot in return. But as you said, a lot of these other guys that are through, second round, third round, fourth round drafting, hitting on these guys, kind of similar to, as you said, with the Bruins, with guys like Marchand, even Bergeron as a second round pick. I think that's the biggest key is just having, hitting on enough prospects further down the line. You look at even a guy like Ryan Lindgren, who they got, who, I don't think he was like the headliner out of that Rick Nash deal, but it's a guy that works out quite well. Now, again, like things have also worked in their favor, like Adam Fox being like, fuck everyone, like bring me to New York, helps out quite a bit. Like that, like there's other things like that. There's like this Benajed trade, all those things. But I think when people look at rebuilding, and you're seeing it now in terms of what the Bruins have to do going forward, it's easy to just be like, blow it all up, tank for Connor Bedard. And like, of course, yeah, that's great. And you look at maybe a team like the Avalanche, who have, hit on guys like McKinnon and McCaw and stuff like that. Or of course, like the Oilers with McDavid, which gives you just a cheat code out there. But it's not the only way, and it's not really the most sustainable way. You look at teams like Detroit, you look at teams like Buffalo, or any of these other ones that have gone, searching for top 5 picks. Doesn't always work out that way. Like if you already have a core in place, which the Bruins have, right? You've got a legit number 1 defenseman in McAvoy, which you could compare him to Fox. I'm not saying Swayman Shesterkin, but down the road, he looks like a potential number 1 franchise goalie. You've got a top 6 weapon in Pasternak. Like you've got a core in place that you can build around. It's all about, I think you look at the Rangers and how they supplemented the rest of the core with either drafting, as you said, with like the kid line or what have you. If they can keep this core in place, the Bruins, and you're filling out some of those holes with, internal options that are saving you money, and you're picking your spots correctly. Like instead of maybe going out and signing a bunch of free agents to plug up holes in the 3rd line, 4th line, that's where you have like your younger players fill in there, and you save that money to then drop it on a guy like a Panarin. Or in the Bruins case, back when they were building that core, as you said, that's when you spend money on Savad and Chara, right? Like you pick your spots to then put yourself over the top with this core, as opposed to using that money to kind of sign veteran guys. So again, the Bruins are still a ways away, I think, from maybe having as promising of a core as this Rangers team does have, but they're following kind of a similar formula that you took, 15, 20 years ago. The Bruins would probably be wise to kind of follow that similar strategy, as opposed to blowing things up and hoping to fall into a top 3 pick, further down the line.
It's funny. I'm looking at the Rangers lines right now, and you look at that 3rd line, the kid line, right, where you have Lafreniere, Hedel, and Kakko. And normally you would expect Kakko, your 2 high 1st round picks, to be in your top 6. In their case, it's almost like flipped around. They're in the bottom 6. But you're still not spending a lot on that 3rd line. Whereas you look at a team like the Bruins, who spent quite a bit on depth last year because they did not have the draft picks or prospects that they felt could slot in on those 3rd lines. That's an issue. Like that's one area where the Rangers did it right. The Bruins have not done it right, where you're spending $4 million on Nick Foligno, money on Nosek, things like that. Like that's where it does differ. Now, again, they also gave a ton of money to like Barclay Goodrow, right? So that is one area.
Sammy Blais.
Yes, Sammy Blais. And they gave up Pavel Buchnevich in that just mind-numbing trade. But again, and it's funny that it's interesting the Rangers are back, because remember this offseason, we're all going, what are they doing? They fired Gorton. They wanted to get tougher and bigger. They brought in like Ryan Reeves. They went out and made some really weird moves, but the core of the team didn't really change. It was the outer part of it that did. And so they're back, they're actually developing. And again, I think it's good for the NHL when the Rangers are good. There are lessons to take, though. And I think the biggest one is you have to draft and develop well outside of, you got to hit on your 2nd and 3rd round picks, and even your 4th round picks. Like, I just think that that's important. You see it with this Bruins team. Like, think about if they'd hit on a few more of those 2nd round picks or 3rd round picks. And I mean, obviously we point to the 2015 draft, but, just around that time period, might be in a different spot. Lindgren also, by the way, was a Bruin formerly. So that's another one.
Be a damn good Bruin.
A
lot of Bruins fans would like him.
He would be a Bruin through and through. And he would wear that Johnny Boychuk number 55 with pride. Rounding out the show, speaking of prospects, speaking of the devil, prospects, Jack Studnicka. It's interesting because for the last, how many years now? 18-19, we weren't really considering him for the Bruins, were we? It was more 19-20 was the first year.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like, okay, he could make the roster. He's making a push. So 19-20, 21, 21, 22. So we're going on 4 years here now of waiting for him to develop. And by the way, it takes time for people to develop. Like, we're not sitting here saying you got to jump in and making an impact immediately. But do you see someone like Jack Studnicka coming in this year and making some sort of impact with Cassidy maybe having a leash a bit longer for these younger players?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all going to come down to what the Bruins do this offseason, right? If it's Krejci and Bergeron, then if they're coming back, then I think he's going to be at the wayside, which at this point, I don't think you're like, don't have any room for him again. Like, it's one of those ones where, again, if you go into this this training camp and there's a spot for him further down the lineup, I think you should give him more of an extended look because, as you said, look at the Rangers' third line, right? That wasn't a group that was really lighting things up for most of the year. And maybe if you give him a little bit more time to, settle into a role there, who knows what happens? Like, I understand, like, probably the frustration for Studnicka in terms of losing a lot of momentum going into the year because we had all this talk about him bulking up, like, putting in all this work in the offseason. And he had a really good training camp and a really good preseason, and then kind of was on the outside looking in at that point. So it's only natural, I think, for any player, especially one that probably has put in a bunch of work, to have that come down afterwards of not making the team of what else do I need to do. And yeah, you could, say that he's not had a long leash, but also there's been other times where he's been granted top 6 looks where hasn't done much to play off of it. Like, you look at like kind of the end of the regular season, he had, I think, 1 or 2 games in the top 6. Didn't make much of an impact. It was guys like Steen or guys further down the lineup that made more of an impression during those reps. So it's tough because has he been given every opportunity to kind of showcase his ability? Probably not, but still, sometimes it's all about what you make with the time given to you. And
when life gives you lemons.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things where, as much people I think talk about Cassidy and giving guys a short leash, you also need to see something more from these players, right? Like, it's the same with like Frederick, where it's, benching him in the playoffs. It's like, well, all right, well, Frederick, as great as he played back in, March and April, you go to the playoffs, he was going through that same identity crisis earlier in the year where he was ineffective and just taking bad penalties. Like, you can't have that against a team like Carolina. So it's kind of a mix of both in terms of the state of the Bruins prospect pipeline, at least kind of that generation of the Studnickas, the Vakanainens, those guys, and maybe the Bruins giving a little bit more of a leeway. So if there's a roster spot available, which who knows what they're going to do in terms of clearing off cap space, I'd give him a look, but I don't think you can go into the year expecting him to be a top or just a everyday NHL player. If there was a time to do it, it should have been last year. And I think it's probably more of a statement on the Bruins, or maybe just how they didn't plan things out last year, that instead of giving him a set role and being like, all right, like, you put in the work this offseason, it'll be a spot waiting for you, they then signed Haula, Nosek, and Foligno and all these guys. Like, last year was the year to really give him that run. So fear or not, it's just kind of the way it is right now. Because I don't think, let's say Krejci and Bergeron don't come back, I don't imagine that going into next year with Studnicka at like 2C and just seeing how they go with it. And if that is the case, Christ, they're in trouble.
They're in trouble. I think we know what they'll be doing at the deadline if that's the case. I mean, I think they got really discouraged with him at the beginning of the COVID 2021 season. Remember when when they went into training camp and who was out? Was it Bergeron who was out? Or someone, and Studnicka was in the top 6. Like, Studnicka's role was going to be top 6 to begin the year, I think, on the top line. Someone, I forget who it was that was missing, but there was someone missing, and he was the guy who was going to go in the whole training camp. He was the guy. And then he just kind of disappeared after the first couple regular season games, and it went nowhere. And he didn't really do much. Their leash was very short with him, and that was it. And I think they got discouraged with that because I think they thought that was going to be like his coming out party. He was good. That was his time to become part of the upper echelon of Bruins forwards, and he just didn't do it. Whether that's coaching, whether that's him, I'm not, I think it's a mix of both. But to see that, I think that was part of why coming into this season, they didn't really consider him to be a legit option. Wild though, considering like that's a good guy to have in your bottom 6, skill wise, can kill penalties, can win some draws. Like, that's a good guy to have in your bottom 6. Maybe that's better for him to have him in the lineup than like Nosek, right? Because again, like Tomasz Nosek, his offensive numbers weren't terrible in seasons prior to this for a, fourth line guy. Guy didn't score after January, or after like January 2nd, two goals all season or something?
2 goals all season.
Yeah. 2 goals all season. Same with Nick Foligno. So that's money that you could have put elsewhere. That's money that you could have had more cap space and things like that. And you could be in a better financial situation now. So lots of blame to go around, but I think with a guy like Stanika, I think it's partially him, but it's also partially the Bruins farm system has not been great in recent years. So he kind of always looked like a big fish in a small pond. And it was also like the coaching staff maybe didn't develop him as well as maybe another team could have. I am curious if he ever went to another team, if he'd actually produce or not. Because there's a good chance. We've always joked about DeBrusk going. So like if DeBrusk went to Nashville for like Matthias Ekholm, that DeBrusk would be like a consistent 35 goal scorer. I wonder if Stanika would go somewhere and be like, oh, this guy's a legit top 6 center. But only time will tell this year. That's going to be an interesting thing to watch. A lot of interesting things to watch. Still waiting on Patrice Bergeron, what his deal is. And if David Krejci decides, maybe David Pastrnak will knock David Krejci out, like stuff him in like his luggage and
carry on
to America. Yes. Yeah. He'll bring him on with him.
What the most Bruins thing that would happen is like Krejci will announce he's coming back. It'll be one of those tweets like a message from David Krejci. And it'll be us like getting it and then have to like read through it real quick before we go and like tweet out what the actual, and everyone will be really happy and like pumped that he's back. And then the next day it'll be like a message from Patrice Bergeron. He's going to retire. It's going to be like 2 opposite things like that. That would be actually the most Bruins thing ever.
Yes.
The most Bruins thing ever is both of them just don't come back.
Yes.
And then people just get really sad. But the other likely scenario would be that one, the one I first mapped out. So yes. We will see, Evan. We will see.
We will see. Lots to watch this offseason. And when people want to go read some stuff over at Boston Sports Journal with you, what can people look forward to? Not just Bruins, obviously, but Celtics as well.
Yes. Throughout the NBA Finals, I will be helping out our great Celtics writer, John Corrales, with all of his Celtics musings. He's over in San Francisco now for games 1 and 2, so it should be a fantastic series there. And in terms of hockey related content, we'll have you covered throughout the summer in terms of free agency targets, trade targets, next steps for the Bruins, instant reaction to I'm sure plenty of news that will drop throughout the next couple of weeks and months. So all that stuff will be over at BSJ. So please subscribe at bostonsportsjournal.com. Want to follow me on Twitter? You can do that at ConorRyan_93.
Go do all that. That's Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofski. You Poke the Bear listeners. Have a great rest of your day.